Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Fun time had by all. I'm PD Rave, and I'm not sure precisely how a tear would go up in flames, but it sure sounds metal as hell. And here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my quorum. We've got David.
The Record Breakers podcast is a coordinated, casual conversation about cacophonous contributions.
Mm-hmm. We've got Drew.
Wait, I thought we were doing alliterations. I would have prepared something.
Off the dome, baby. Off the dome.
Look, I'm a pen and pad guy. I don't freestyle. It's not my way. I gotta have the writtens, man.
And you'll probably have to unmute yourself, but we've got Alev. I may have muted you.
How rude. Hello everyone again.
We're here. Of course, Alev is our guest, our fourth chair here for the episodes. We're here talk about music. We're here to talk about an album. And the provider of the album this week is David. David, what have you got for us this week?
This week, I have brought an album from a heavy metal band from Sweden that I first discovered around, I guess now about 15 years ago, with their album Waiting in the Wings. And it was one of those times where I hear a metal band and it just kind of blew me away. They just had really all of the pieces. Great instrumentation, great technicality, well produced, a great singer. They just had it all. And they're one of those bands that I've just tried to share and spread the word about ever since I've heard them. Because I think that they are, overall, in terms of talent and musical output and just everything you want, they are on par with some of the best and some of the more famous on the melodic and progressive side of metal. And this is the band Seventh Wonder and their 2022 album, The Testament.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I didn't have many besides Dave said it was on the proggy side and the album art, which I'll reference but not point to. So, and the album art being a little crazy, a little abstract, which usually for me and how I like my metal, I would say lends towards a good time. But I had not heard of this band. Found out they were Swedish, and Swedish and Prague usually goes together pretty well.
Lev, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Honestly, I don't think I really had any expectations. I think I said take that back. I think it was mentioned last episode that David said it was going to be like a prog metal kind of deal. So I was expecting like, okay, the only prog like metal or music that I really know, to be honest, is like Tool. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's kind of like that, and it wasn't at all like that. But I expected, but I was kind of right in the sense that I was like, okay, it's gonna have very elaborate melodies and lots of notes.
Yes, lots.
So I guess
of
I was
notes.
just I was kind of expecting that for this album. For sure.
Lots of notes, lots of music. Yeah, I was expecting for my I we've had quite a few offerings from David as far as like on the prog side from the beginning days of him coming on as a guest, and all of it has been high caliber and high quality. Especially we're talking about somebody who is saying that it's on the caliber of like Dream Theater. So I was like, okay, this is gonna be epic. This is gonna be high level. So I was looking forward to something high level, high energy, and high and epic. But let's talk about what we got. because I think we got precisely that. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I don't compare bands to Dream Theater very often because they are, in my opinion, the gold standard in the genre. Seventh Wonder, in my opinion, in the last 20 years is probably the closest in the modern era of this genre. They are a band where the leader, the bass player, Andreas Blomqvist, has said in many interviews that Dream Theater bassist John Mayung is a major, major influence on him. So if you are a bass player, you will probably get a kick out of a lot of things happening on this album. If you are just into metal in general, and if you have even a little bit of a knowledge of the more technical, progressive side, you will definitely get some riffs, some widdlies, and some time signatures. And I especially want to highlight the vocalist of Seventh Wonder, Tommy Karavik, who is now also in the band Camelot. I think Tommy Karavik is one of those vocalists for metal bands that come along maybe once every 20 or 30 years. He's a very special and unique singer in the genre. And I think he lifts this band to a different dimension than they would be in. And you hear his vocal range all over this album. He doesn't show it as much in other projects as he's been in, but Seventh Wonder is kind of his home project, and he really gets to show his full talent as a vocalist here all across this album. And I really think with that and the entire package and the concept of the album telling the story of emotions and how emotions can be conveyed and the stories they can tell, you really get a very, sorry, PD, interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, first off, hearing that the lead singer also moonlights in Camelot, one of my favorite sort of power metal bands, it's something that makes a lot of sense. Also, the band leader is the bassist, because holy shit, the bass in this was amazing. It's something that really stuck out to me. Usually in this type of metal, there is an overpowering sense of guitar work and vocal. So to hear a bass so prominently, I think is really great. And they did a lot of things that felt almost jazz-like in a way. The way they built to solos, the way they would drop in and out for those solos, and the way they pieced everyone around it felt very much in that milieu in ways. And I think that's smart because it lets those musicians shine, because there is some intense musicianship on this record. The fact that you can compare it to Dream Theater, who is known for like having that really tight musicianship, is great. Also, there was a tone to this overall record that just it is cliche to say, but it is like a feeling, like an epic feeling, like that, like ride off on your like a horse with a sword, sort of like we're going to fight evil, no matter what that is. Having it sound like that, and then deal with these different like overarching themes, these emotional themes, I think is really, really smart and lends something to it. It's not just, I like Camelot a lot, but but all of their songs are always like, we're riding off into the sunset to fight, and like, while I love that, sometimes it's nice to just have like, hey, here's an album of songs about what songs are usually about, which is like, here's like things about emotion, which I think is good.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to say to Camelot fans, since you already know their singer, here's his other band where you see him kind of at 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alev, how would you describe this album musically?
To be honest with you, I kind of want to like add on to what Drew said. With when he said that when you listen to this album, you think of like riding off on a horse in the distance with swords. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I started listening to this album, I immediately thought of that. Like I'm like, I can totally picture just like shredding to this, like on top of like a really high mountain with like lightning and dragons everywhere. So it has a very like fantastical type of vibe. And that, I mean, I guess to describe this album, I mean, there's that, but also it's just, to me, I can only describe it as like a crepe cake. You know, there's just so many layers to it. That just have like, you have all these like different instruments playing together, but you hear them so clearly and they're played so masterfully that it just, I found like admiration in that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just so much like quality in the musicianship. Yeah, this is epic. This is epic power metal. This is epic power progressive metal. Like just as soon as it starts, all the pieces really kind of like add up to something that is greater than the sum of its parts. The guitar work is epic and awesome. The bass work, especially when it gets moments to just shine on its own, and just get its own solos, which we'll talk about probably in the tracks. But it's just fantastic. But the vocals, it's just the epic, the epic friggin' face melter vocals. Like it's just getting your like face, just your scalp melted off your skull from the singing. It is tight but fluid. It is well constructed, but not rigid. It is just like it kind of like it explodes out there in just a beautiful way. It's just explosive and epic and just kind of like drives into you, and like no track gets lost in the shuffle. Like nothing feels out of place, or nothing really feels forgettable. Like every like track just has its thing and has its like magic moments. And it's really just fantastic about the album. But yeah, let's talk about key tracks. Let's talk about those tracks. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
For me, I will start out with track number 2, The Light. This is my favorite metal song of 2022. Tommy sounds fantastic. It's got this big uplifting chorus. The breakdown he really goes for it, and it's fantastic. The riffs are really intense and really, really good. The bass player has some really good bass parts in the middle, and it has all of the hallmarks of a Seventh Wonder song, and it checks all of the boxes, and you really get the feeling that the emotion the song is trying to convey of joy. That's the emotion of the song, and I really think you get that. Reflections. It gives you the prog metal instrumental without being 10 or 15 minutes long. It shows what the band is capable of, but it doesn't go on too long. Also, track 5, The Red River, in my opinion, is the centerpiece of this album. It's a complete musical track from a band like this. Great guitar work. The band is playing at a really high level. I love the chorus in this song. I absolutely love the chorus. And track 6, Invincible. I think the singer has always said that, along with being a metal guy, he has a lot of pop influences. Like he's even said in interviews, some of his bigger influences are Michael Jackson and Mariah Carey. And I think you hear a little bit of that on this song, track 6, Invincible. And it brings a sense of melody that other bands just don't possess that Seventh Wonder does. Along with being really heavy and technical, they are extremely melodic. And you get to hear their bass player in their mix higher than pretty much any metal band. And that's great because their bass player is really, 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 really good. And I like hearing him play. And those are my tracks: The Light, Reflections, The Red River, and Invincible.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, we always make the joke, I go with the first track, because the first track should be, in my opinion, like a lead into the album and sort of explain how you're getting into it and what you're stepping into. And while Warriors is a great track, I think it works better as a single, and I think The Light would work better as that opening track, because I think Light is a stronger song overall. It does sort of everything you're going to get into in this record. It is a bit of a longer track than Warriors is. Warriors is under 5 minutes. So you sort of get the idea that these songs are going to have time to breathe. And it lets the instruments and the solos noodle and play around when it's appropriate, and nothing overstays its welcome, which I think encapsulates a lot of what sometimes can happen when you get into anything where the musicians know that they're going to work on it and be good. Sometimes they can get a little bit in over their head. I don't think that ever happened here, and I think The Light sort of proves that. Red River, the way the piano and the guitar sort of play on each other and like loop in and out, I think was really cool. There's a build there that seems really nice. That it's just a brilliant thing to hear when two musicians sort of get a intertwining melody right. You hear it in the moments they meet up, and that like sets you on this musical journey that I think is really fun. Anytime you have a song that is over 5-6 minutes long and you can make it feel like it's 4 or under, because of how varied each verse can be, and how fun and inviting each one of those verses is, I think you've got a pretty solid track for me. Under a Clear Blue Sky does that, and it does it like way too well. It is, to me, a shining example of, if you let your song breathe a little bit, what you can do with it if you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Alev, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I think just like David and Drew, I really found myself like really liking the tracks The Light and Reflections. I remember writing in my notes in regards to Into the Light that I was like, this sounds like like a video game intro. Like it sounds like if you made like a power metal Kirby theme, you know? And I really liked how like, I don't know if bouncy is the right word to describe it, but I just really like that like melodic and upbeat kind of sound, but it still has that intense like I guess kind of tune that the album's trying to go for, where it's still kind of aggressive but still has this very like clean melodic kind of tune. And as for Reflections, I was really, right off the bat, mind you, I love songs that are able to have multiple transitions throughout a song and execute it beautifully. Every transition within the song was just done so seamlessly and so smooth, and I loved it to death. And I really enjoyed like the beginning, especially where it starts off very slow with the piano work, and then you just have this like explosion of this like the guitars and the riffs coming in. So I found those two tracks to just be like the ones that really stood out to me the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think pretty much reflect the thoughts that everybody had about the light and those tracks. I would say the one that I would highlight Elegy uh as a closing track is just a perfect closing track. It just felt like a perfect closing track. The in such a way that when I was first listening to the album, without looking at anything or really paying attention to like what was the first or second or whatever number of tracks, when it came up, I was like, this sounds like it's probably like the closing track, probably the end of the album. I don't know, maybe we'll see. And then by the time it ends, and it confirmed it when I started hearing the beginning of Warriors, because I have it on loop. It's like, oh yeah, it was the closing track, because like the way that it kind of just has this new, like almost like a reprise of what they do. It's a different style. It's a very like ballad song, but it has its own epic moments. But it's just a nice like closing credits of the epic fantasy film kind of track, the love theme from the Testament, if anything. And I think it just is a beautiful rejoinder to the album as a whole. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn. Talk about some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This album is something that there are albums that remind me why I love doing this show. And I think the first time I said it, and the one I always go back to, was one of our super, 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 super early episodes. PD probably knows what I'm going to say. And that's Bad Rabbits. And the best compliment I can give to a record, in my opinion, is it will have the same effect that Bad Rabbits did, which is it will be in regular rotation. It will be something when I want something proggy and metally and powerful and going off in the battle. Like, my Camelots always come up. Coheed comes up for me because I'm that guy. And this is going to go along in that playlist of I want to drive home feeling like I just vanquished either an alien or something. I want to feel great about where I'm going, and I want it to be scored with metal. I don't know what else I can say. If I'm going to go back to it, and I know I'm going to go back to it, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Alev, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole? There you go.
Okay, cool. We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
The conclusion of this album that I have, I would say that I liked it. I mean, it was very different from what I'm normally used to listening to. But again, it has a lot of like energy to it. Lots of energy. Again, lots of notes. I could totally see myself like needing something a lot more calming to listen to afterwards. Maybe like last week's album, for example. But even though it was out of the realm of what I'm normally listening to, like I still found little bits of it that I could still enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that you guys brought up Camelot a lot, because when I first listened to this album, like when I heard the vocals, I was like, why does this remind me so much of Camelot? And I don't even know that much about Camelot. I really don't. I know like a couple songs. And I was like, why am I thinking about this band so much? And then I find out later that the lead singer took over for them like in 2012, I believe. So I was like, oh, that's where I'm getting it from. And that's where like I'm getting that distinct like sound from. And I'm pretty familiar with it. So I think just based on me like knowing that, I was like, okay, I have something to base this off of. And now I can find like something that I could like about this, even though it's out of the realm of what I'm used to. But overall, I thought this was a really solid, really clean. I love the instrumentals. It was really good.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, like I said, it's an album that is a beautiful collection that is some greater than some of its parts. It is an epic album. It is a fun album. It is just a good fun pump your fist album. But there's just so much going on musically that you can really sink your teeth into, and I think it is definitely especially if you are I need to go and get a little bit more familiar with Camelot now as well, but if you are, for example, somebody who is a fan of Camelot, you can find a lot here. If you're a fan of like epic power metal, you can find a lot here. There's a lot to really kind of like lift your soul and feed your hunger for that here, and there's just so much to enjoy here, and I think it's definitely worth checking out big time. Yeah, last but not least, David, what will be your conclusion at the end of the day?
As a Seventh Wonder fan, this is probably my favorite album of theirs since the album that was their breakout, Mercy Falls. And I really loved this entire album from start to finish. It is a kind of a complete album that gives you everything you could want from a band in this genre. I like my metal to have lots of things going on, and Seventh Wonder does not disappoint in that regard. They do a lot. I call them extra, but I don't fault them for it, because I love that. And it really highlights what you can compose when you really, really try. But also at the same time, if you don't go overboard. And I think it works from start to finish.
Yeah, that definitely is the case. Yeah, now those are our thoughts on the Testament, Seventh Wonder. Now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, our Haiku Reviews, where we hit you with this 575, sum it all up in poetic form. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno. Drew, what is your haiku?
Let me unmute first. All power music, screaming to the clear blue sky. Can't get much better.
Yeah. Alev, what is your haiku?
Okay, so I actually attempted to write this one this time,
Yes.
and I think it's in spirit of the upcoming Halloween season. Okay, I love all black cats, even when they cross my path. Bad luck is for chumps.
Exactly. My haiku. Big epic metal with power and emotion. Every piece is key. Yeah. And last but not least, David, what is your haiku?
Bass-friendly metal. Technical, melodic, loud. Should be superstars.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are our thoughts on these should be superstars. You can of course check out Seventh Wonder's Testament on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Follow along at home. We've got the two playlists, one with the episode slotted in, one without. Fun time there to explore. On that playlist will be next week's record, and that's going to be provided by Drew. Drew, what have you got for us next week?
So, next week we're going to take a bit of a detour. I was trying to make a decision on sort of where I wanted to go with this one. But I think our best choice, and something that I think we should have gotten into a while ago, is a guy from a hip-hop collective known as Odd Future Wolfgang, Kill Them All. gentleman known as Frank Ocean with Channel Orange.
Mm-hmm. Look forward to that. But that'll be next week, and this is this week, and you can, of course, find us all over the internet. As I play the music. Is it? There you go. You can find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at X. Alev is at Mercury Him. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelly.net for this and other shows. Rebelly TV on YouTube and on Twitch. You can watch us live on Twitch. Watch this podcast. Watch Through the Tomes, our D&D show. You can also check out the Witcher streams where we hang out with Siri. We finally rescued her, so she's been hanging out with us. We're doing some endgame stuff, so look forward to that. Big endgame stuff going on there. Yeah, also I'm going to try to finally get back to Mass Effect. I'm going to continue some other games, checking out stuff, other big stream ideas happening. Follow, see when we go live, hang out for all the fun. But yeah, check out all the things, find us where you podcast, all that stuff. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.
Annyeong. Fighting. Matthew Swiggles Walton on the everything.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.